Hey, friends, and welcome back to Post-Mormon Parenting. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than usual. I just could not let another day go by without talking about Elder Holland's speech that he gave at BYU on Monday of this week, August 23rd, 2021. This was a speech delivered to BYU faculty and staff, and it was immediately published on church news right afterward. And so it really quickly gained the attention of, I think, the whole Mormon community, especially the LGBTQ Mormon community and post-Mormon community. He talked a lot about how BYU really needs to stand with God's anointed himself about these issues and not ever criticizing church leaders or throwing stones at them whatsoever. If he had just stuck with the family proclamation says only a husband and a wife can be sealed and only they can have a celestial marriage, and no, we're not supporting any kind of gay marriage because it doesn't lead to salvation or a celestial marriage. If he had just said that and said, now BYU faculty, you need to be on board with us about this and not teach anything differently, like that would have been one thing and really probably wouldn't have gotten much attention whatsoever. But that's not what he said. What he ended up saying was quite a lot more disturbing than that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So he spends the first few minutes of the talk talking about how much he loves BYU and how he has been there longer than any other person who is alive, basically, and how that means he gets to say whatever he wants. Literally, he said those words. And so anybody else in the audience can just like sit down and shut up, basically, and pay attention to what he says, because what he says obviously matters more because he's been around longer. Makes sense, right? He says they got a letter from some person, which just says a memo I received. You should know, the writer says, that some people in the extended community are feeling abandoned and betrayed by BYU. And when I first heard that, I was like, yeah, the LGBTQ community has been abandoned and betrayed by them. Think about the 70s when Elder Oaks put ads in the local newspaper trying to trap gay students, and how there was like witch hunts kind of things for gay students, and how was it Ernest Wilkinson who had said to incoming class of freshmen, if any of you are gay, we don't want that kind of virus here. You need to leave. We'll refund your tuition. Get out. Yeah, there are some people in the extended community are feeling abandoned and betrayed by BYU. But guess what? That's not who the letter is talking about. The letter goes on. It seems that some professors, at least the vocal ones in the media, are supporting ideas that many of us feel are contradictory to gospel principles, making it appear to be about like any other university our sons and daughters could have attended. Several parents have said they no longer want to send their children here or donate to the school. Yes. Please don't think I'm opposed to people thinking differently about policies and ideas, the writer continues. Although obviously this person is opposed to BYU professors saying anything different about policies and ideas. I'm not, but I would hope that BYU professors would be bridging those gaps between faith and intellect and would be sending out students that are ready to do the same in loving, intelligent, and articulate ways. Yet I fear that some faculty are not supportive of the church's doctrines and policies and choose to criticize them publicly. There are consequences to this. Yeah. After having served a full-time mission and marrying her husband in the temple, a friend of mine recently left the church. In her graduation statement on a social media post, she credited such and such a BYU program and its faculty with the radicalizing of her attitudes and the destruction of her faith. So let's talk about that for a second. Learning about evolution can radicalize a person and destroy their faith. Because if you were taught from your parents, like a lot of Mormon kids are, that evolution is not really a thing. Past prophets, presidents of the church have said evolution is not real. And that's never actually been publicly disavowed by any current leaders. So this is still very much believed. You go to BYU, you start learning about evolution, you think, wait a minute, everything I taught was wrong. Everything I was taught was wrong. What else? What else have I been taught incorrectly? So yeah, even just learning about evolution can radicalize a person and lead to the destruction of their faith, which, you know, if your faith can be destroyed because you learned about something as real as evolution or say climate change, then maybe your faith deserves to be destroyed, at least in some degree. Elder Holland goes on. Fortunately, we don't get many of those letters, but this one isn't unique. Several of my colleagues get the same kind, with most of them ultimately being forwarded to poor President Worthen. We're going to skip forward a little bit. He quotes Elder Neil A. Maxwell, who has said, in a way, Latter-day Saints scholars at BYU and elsewhere are a little bit like the builders of the temple in Nauvoo, who worked with a trowel in one hand and a musket in the other. Today, scholars building the Temple of Learning must also pause on occasion to defend the kingdom. I personally think this is one of the reasons the Lord established and maintains this university. The dual role of builder and defender is unique and ongoing. I am grateful we have scholars today who can handle, as it were, both trowels and muskets. Then Elder Oakes said after saying that, after quoting Neil A. Maxwell, I would like to hear a little more musket fire from this Temple of Learning. Okay, so what are they even talking about? What was the letter talking about? What are those things that those BYU professors are teaching to the students that radicalize them? We will never know, because Elder Holland doesn't specify. He alludes to the fact that it's something about the LGBTQ plus community and what the church teaches about that. And maybe BYU professors are disagreeing with that, but he never actually says. We don't get any examples. We don't get any specifications here. So it's up to the listener to kind of guess at what Elder Holland is talking about. Same here with the muskets. We know, okay, so the builders of the Nauvoo temple had muskets in order to literally shoot people who were coming to persecute the saints. I use persecute lightly because we also know that those saints were being pretty violent with the people that they were coming across in that area. So they were literally taking up muskets in order to defend themselves or go on the offense, right? To actually shoot and kill people. So when Elder Holland quotes Neil A. Maxwell and Elder Oakes saying, we need more musket fire from BYU, what the hell is he talking about? Maybe he's just talking about apologetics. Maybe he wants people to be more active on social media in defending the church's stance on being gay and Mormon. Maybe he wants people to be bigger advocates of being gay and Mormon. And maybe he wants them to teach people how to live celibate lives or enter into mixed orientation marriages, both of which we know for sure are terrible options and not good for a high quality of life. But he doesn't specify. He just says we need some more musket fire. We're talking about the doctrine of the family, defending marriage as the union of a man and a woman. Great. Okay. But where are the shields, right? Like maybe we can have some shields, maybe a trowel and a shield. Why do we need a trowel and a musket? Because as Jesus famously said, if someone strikes you, turn the other cheek and brandish your AR-15 at them. Jesus maybe flipped tables in the temple, but it didn't shoot anybody. Elder Holland goes on. Little did Elder Oakes know that while many would hear his appeal about firing muskets, especially the School of Family Life, who moved quickly and visibly to assist, some others fired their muskets all right, but unfortunately didn't always aim at those hostile to the church. A couple of stray rounds even went north of the point of the mountain. Now, if you've never been to BYU, if you're driving from BYU, you're going north to Salt Lake City and church headquarters, you're going to drive around this place called the Point of the Mountain. So when he's talking about stray rounds going north of the Point of the Mountain, he's talking about from BYU up to church headquarters. So it seems like he's indicating that maybe some BYU faculty had shot some criticism at somebody or some policies at church headquarters. How terrible, how terrible. He says a house divided against itself cannot stand, meaning you can't be shooting criticisms at us leaders, the Lord's anointed. You can't be doing that. That's not allowed because this will fall. So come on, get in line. Here, I want to pause and give a little bit of backdrop to what is happening at BYU campus. So a while back, I want to say maybe about a year ago, I was scrolling through Instagram and Twitter, and I trying to learn more about Deseret Nation, right? They're a loose group of casually affiliated Mormons, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, called Deseret. They call themselves Deseret Nation. DesNat for short. Now, their call is like, the church is like not even conservative enough. We need to get it back even more conservative, even more radical, and even more fundamental. We are unapologetic about it. Brigham Young did nothing wrong ever. And we need to go back to his brand of Mormonism, which is scary. And they are very free about using violent imagery in their memes and in their posts and in their language. They post pictures of Bowie knives, which is a reference back to a Brigham Young talk about how he put a Bowie knife on a podium and said, basically, any apostates here, you need to leave or else, you know. They are really open about their violent intentions toward apostates or progmos, progressive Mormons, and basically anyone who they see as being in the way of the church going back to fundamentalist, really radical roots. They are looking forward to the day when the wicked are going to burn in hell. You know what I mean? Like there's no compassion there. There's just like, white is right. And it is very based in white supremacy. So that's DesNat. And like I said, about a year ago, I was like scrolling through stuff and I saw that they had put out this call for all BYU students to please go ahead and snitch on BYU professors who were not being conservative enough or who were maybe promoting or allowing debate in their classes about church policies and things that the brethren have been saying. So when I hear Elder Holland say, look at this letter and all these letters that we've gotten from concerned students and parents, that's where this is coming from. And there's no way that he doesn't know that. So for him to use this kind of violent, warlike, militia-like language, which again, this Deseret Nation group is so fond of using, clearly shows that he is pandering to them. At no point has any church leader ever come out and said they're wrong. So when he uses letters from them and uses language that would appeal to them, now all of a sudden you can see the speech takes on a much darker, much more sinister tone. Now, Elder Holland goes on to say, I and many of my brethren have spent more time and shed more tears on this subject, meaning the same-sex topic and people who struggle with same-sex challenges, than we could ever adequately convey to you this morning or any morning. Oh, I just feel so bad for you. We have spent hours discussing what the doctrine of the church can and cannot provide the individuals and families struggling over this difficult issue. I'm sure you have, because while just about every aspect of the church, every doctrine or policy has actually changed and evolved since the inception of the church, this one isn't going to change. I swear. So it is with scar tissue of our own that we are trying to avoid, and hope all will try to avoid, language, symbols, and situations that are more divisive than unifying at the very time we want to show love for all of God's children. Now, when we say all lives matter, or we show love to all God's children, that means we're not going to focus on the minority here. We're not going to say, hey, I see that you are having a particularly difficult time here. I see that you are being marginalized. I see that there's a lot of violence against you, our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. No, we're going to just weep with everybody. And we're going to say everybody is having a hard time. God loves all of them. And in that way, kind of gloss over the unique challenges that the LGBTQ students are having. And when he talks about avoiding language, symbols, and situations, it seems like he's talking about the recent pride parades and protests, flags, lighting up the rainbow in the rainbow colors. That's what he wants people to avoid. He wants people to avoid divisive language like that, because we're not going to single out one group. We're not going to make one group feel like they are comfortable and welcome and belong. No. We're going to just gloss over them and just say well, God just loves all his children. So we don't need rainbows. We don't need flags. We don't need parades to make them feel safe here, despite the fact that their suicide rates are way higher than average and that their violence against them is way more common than violence against just all of God's children. It's really, really disheartening to hear him say things like that. It gets worse. 2 years ago, there was a valedictorian at BYU named Matt Easton. During his commencement address, he did mention that he is a gay son of God. He didn't talk a whole lot about his experience being a gay student at BYU, which must have been extremely challenging. He got his speech approved by the dean of his college prior to the commencement address. Elder Holland says, if a student commandeers a graduation podium intended to represent everyone getting diplomas in order to announce his personal sexual orientation, what might another speaker feel free to announce the next year until eventually anything goes? There's that slippery slope fallacy. What might commencement come to mean or not mean if we push individual license over institutional dignity for very long? Do we simply end up with more divisiveness in our culture than we already have? And we already have too much everywhere. Now, Elder Holland, the way to deal with divisiveness is not to say, shut up and get in line, stop having your opinions. The way to deal with divisiveness and people having different opinions is to preach acceptance and tolerance for those other opinions, not to just try to forcefully make those opinions go away, because it's not going to happen. Trying to do that is going to create divisiveness because you're creating intolerance for those opinions. And I know Elder Bednar said that there are things that we just cannot tolerate, but as long as that's your attitude, then you are creating the divisiveness. So don't try to pretend like you're not. Like the divisiveness is caused by the members of the church. It's just another example of the leaders of the church throwing the members of the church under the bus. Too often, the world has been unkind, in many instances, crushingly cruel to these, our brothers and sisters. Again, throwing members and other people in the world under the bus for literally the things that he and his colleagues have been doing for decades.
If children have a happy family experience, they will not want to be homosexuals, which I am sure is an acquired addiction, just as drugs, alcohol, and pornography are.
He says, we have to be careful that love and empathy do not get interpreted as condoning and advocacy, that orthodoxy and loyalty to principle not be interpreted as unkindness or disloyalty to people. I mean, I see what you're kind of saying. I see that you're saying that God's commandments are going to change. We just cannot allow gay people to get married because that would be letting them live in sin. Now, they have their own free agency. They can choose to live in sin if they want to, but we're actually not going to let them do that. We won't let it happen. We're not going to allow them to use their free agency to do that. But let's not let that be interpreted wrong, because we still are loyal to them and kind to them. Being loyal to those kinds of principles are for sure unkind and disloyal to people. And again, the church is putting policies and doctrine above people. Like Jesus famously said, it's all about the letter of the law, not the relationships and the spirit of the law. He says, as near as I can tell, Christ never once withheld his love from anyone, but he also never once said to anyone, because I love you, you are exempt from keeping my commandments. No, but you know what he said? That woman taken in adultery didn't need to face the punishments of the law. He said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone or pull the trigger on their musket. He says, musket fire, yes, we will always need defenders of the faith, but friendly fire is a tragedy. And from time to time, the church, its leaders, and some of our colleagues within the university community have taken such fire on this campus. Oh, really? Oh, you poor faculty, having gotten a little bit of criticism and some unkind words from people who are livid about the treatment of their sons and daughters and friends and selves and partners who are treated as lower than second-class citizens on BYU campus. No, but yeah, it's really about you and your colleagues, Elder Holland, and the wounding that you've taken from all of this. And sometimes it isn't friendly, wounding students and the parents of students who are confused about what so much recent flag waving, rainbow flags, and parade holding on this issue means. Oh, they're so confused about what it means to wave rainbow flags and say, we're all children of God in rainbow colors and light the Y in rainbow colors. How confusing that must be to them. It's not confusing. Gay people exist and they want to be acknowledged and they want to be accepted for who they are, not for people to try to change them. If there's one thing that we have learned from BYU, it is that conversion therapy does not work. It doesn't do any good. In fact, it does extreme harm. So it's about time that these confused students and parents, BYU faculty and church leaders understand that these flags and these parades exist to help people understand that it is okay. It is okay that these students are gay, and you don't need to change them. You don't need to try to pray away the gay. You don't need to try to change their sexual orientation. It doesn't work. He says, my brethren have made the case for the metaphor of musket fire, which I have endorsed yet again today. There will continue to be those who oppose our teachings. And with that will continue the need to define, document, and defend the faith. Again, you're not being expressly clear about what you mean by this metaphor with musket fire, and therefore you are maintaining plausible deniability for when people like Deseret Nation followers use actual physical violence and take up their firearms against the gay community and people who are allies and advocates for the gay community, and do actual physical harm and terrorize them with threats of physical harm and harass them online. You get to have plausible deniability by saying, that's not what I meant, but you purposely didn't come out and say extremely clearly what you did mean with all of this violent rhetoric and imagery, did you? He says, but we all look forward to the day when we can beat our swords into plowshares and our spears into pruning hooks. And at least on this subject, learn war no more. War? Why does this have to be war? Why does it have to be war with other people? You literally have BYU gay students on campus who are literally believing you, believing the gospel. They're not anti. They're not trying to go to war with you or go to war with what you're teaching. They're trying to live the gospel, but they're facing intense bigotry and persecution and violence and sexual violence on campus. Another thing that's happening at the same time that Elder Holland is giving this speech, right before he gave this, BYU announced its opening of this Office of Belonging, which is supposed to be a place at BYU that, I don't know, I guess focuses on their students and making sure that there is no discrimination and that everybody that's there feels like they belong. You know what makes gay kids feel like they belong? Seeing a rainbow pride flag. That makes them feel like they belong. And Elder Holland is saying, but that's so confusing having rainbow pride flags on campus and parades on campus. That's confusing. We can't be doing that. Then why have an Office of Belonging after all? Why not just go back to Ernest L. Wilkinson's words to that incoming freshman class and tell gay students, if you're gay, we don't want you here. We think that it's an infectious disease and you need to go. Elder Holland wraps up his speech by talking about how unique and special BYU is. He really tries to hammer this nail into the ground a lot. He says, we must have the will to stand alone if necessary, being a university second to none in its role primarily as an undergraduate teaching institution that is unequivocally true to the gospel of homophobia. I mean, the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because as Jesus Christ famously said, gay people don't get into heaven. From everything that we know about Jesus Christ in the New Testament, it seems like he would really be a really great ally and advocate for LGBTQ plus people. But that's not what Elder Holland wants. He says, if at a future time that mission means foregoing some professional affiliations and certifications, then so be it. And this is the part where it got a lot of people, me included, kind of like, wait a second, are you saying that you would give up accreditation? Like BYU might not be accredited anymore if we maintain this line of thinking and maintain homophobia and maybe not get any kind of government assistance? Because maybe that's really what the church's multi-billion-dollar fund is for. Maybe so they can fund BYU without any kind of government assistance. Before he delivered this speech, a lesbian couple in Utah was shot dead. This is not the kind of language you want to be tossing around, language involving firearms, violence, and people who identify as LGBTQ+. That's not something that's okay to do, ever. So the fact that he did is really chilling. My heart goes out to all of the LGBTQ+ members of our community. We see you. We love you. Speak up about things that you see that are suspicious. Your safety is so important. And I'm so sorry that Elder Holland has just made it even more dangerous to be who you are. Stay safe. Take care.
The promoters of homosexuality say they were born that way, but I do not believe this is true. There are no female spirits trapped in male bodies and vice versa. He who made them male and female. Every form of homosexuality is sin, said the living prophet Spencer W. Kimball.